All right. Hello and welcome to the Untitled Car Show. I'm your host, Ike. Today we are joined by Steve McDaniel. He is the rally boss over at the 24 Hours of Lemons. A couple of events are going on this year, and I'm quite excited for the one that's going to take place on the East Coast. So just kind of get that right out there in the beginning. Steve, how are you doing this evening?
Excellent.
All right.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So the the big thing is the 24 Hours of Lemons been around for just over 10 years now. I guess we're celebrating the 10th year this year, or it was celebrated this year to be more accurate. Um,
Yep.
and I'm curious, how long have you been kind of associated with the event?
Well, I've been working full time for the series for 2 years and loosely for a couple years before that. And I've been racing with them since 2011.
Mhm. So you got in as a racer then?
Yeah. I started as a racer and I kind of got addicted to it. It was a lot of fun. And I traveled around the country and it got to a point where I was doing almost every race of the year just as a competitor, and I got to know the organizers, and then they kind of invited me to start doing some judging at the races, and that led to now working full time for the racing series and heading up the rally stuff as well.
Mhm. So, kind of, how did you get involved with doing the rally stuff? Was this something that was your idea? Was it Jay Lamb's idea? Like, where did it come from?
I think I may be slightly wrong on this, but Jay he did some rallies in the past, but then I'm pretty sure the original idea came from Phil Graydon, Judge Phil, the semi-honorable head of the Lemon Supreme Court. That he we should do a rally based on Napoleon's retreat from Moscow, but we should go from Idaho to Texas, and so a couple years back, Jay said, we've been kicking around this idea of this Moscow to Paris thing for a few years, and nobody ever wanted to tackle it. And we think you're the guy for it. So he sent me over basically just one page. It was a point structure, and then Moscow, Idaho to Paris, Texas. And so that's the original idea of it. And I took a look at it. I did what he wanted me to do, but then I was like, nobody's ever going to do this. And to reduce the risk of people dying on the side of the road, I redesigned it to run from Moscow, Pennsylvania to Paris, Tennessee. And then, but then I went ahead and did one in the summertime that went through Death Valley, which is one of my favorite places, and seemed like a great idea to take some old crappy cars through there in the middle of the summer. So I created that one, and we liked that idea. So we ran that one first. That was this past August, and now we're doing the Moscow to Paris coming up in January, February, the dead of winter, of course.
Mhm. Yeah, the thing I find kind of intriguing about the setup here is, you ran the Death Valley one first, and $500 cars having air conditioning has got to be next to unheard of, like old crappy beaters. At least, with the retreat from Moscow, I guess most cars should have a heater core, you hope?
Yeah. Most cars, actually, you'd be surprised how many people, don't have heater cores. But people from the East Coast definitely should and probably do. And it's easier to fix a heater core than it is an AC unit. But that's the thing with the rallies. We don't really care how much you spend on your car. You're hella not going to win if you come with a car, that has air conditioning and all the fine amenities of modern vehicles. But you can bring whatever you want.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of one of the things. I talked about this with a couple other people before kind of dedicating to going to this, and a lot of them are like, "Oh, do we have to hit the $500 limit?" I'm like, "It doesn't say anywhere it's got to be $500."
Yeah, a
It's
lot of people confuse that because of the racing series, but we don't really care. My idea of it was like a couple people have done already is just I was going to make everybody fly in 3 days before, buy a beater off Craigslist and run it in that. But the logistics of that. proved to be overwhelming. So we kind of abandoned that idea. But really, that's the guys who ran the first one is exactly what they did. And, my guess is the guys who win the second one will probably be something close to that as well. So, that seems to be the winning formula so far for sure.
Well, let's kind of take a step back to the one that's already happened. So, give us an idea of what to expect for the two coming up this year. So, rough timeline. So you arrive first day. What happens the first day when the cars all get to the starting block?
Well, the original, so you have to come for the registration process, basically. Have to check all your paperwork, your registration, insurance, driver's license, all that stuff. And then we judge your car. We decide how many points you get. Some of that is based on a strict structure of, the older it is, the more points it's worth. You get bonus points if it's made by, the Italians or the British, or, you get negative points if it's made by the Germans and the Japanese. So you lay all those points out, and then there's extra points that you give them for just being cool, being terrible, being whatever, the things that LeMons like. If it's the more lemony it is, the more bonus points you're going to get. And then once that's accomplished, you head out on the road. And then along the way, you do bonus checkpoints and you gain more points every day as you go.
Mm-hmm. So to start off, you get basically that's where most of the points come from, or do you get more points from the trip day by day, the bonus points, the checkpoints? Like if someone was out there listening to this and going like, I want to win this whole thing, what is the strategy the winner used, I guess, is a bit of this.
I think I hit on a pretty good balance of it because, definitely you're going to start out with more points if you have an older, crappier car, but it's going to be harder to maintain along the route, and you're maybe going to get less bonus points. But if you have a newer car that runs better, you're going to start out with less points, and it's a pretty good balance. Like at the end of day 2 in the first rally, halfway through, the two leading cars were a really, really crappy car that didn't hit all the checkpoints, and a V12 Jag that had hit every single checkpoint of both the first 2 days. It ended up not finishing, not for mechanical reasons, but because of team breakdown. But they had a good strategy and they were kicking ass. They were in second place with the car that started out with very little points in the beginning. So, you can go either way. You're definitely going to have a better chance if you bring an older, crappier car. But if you have a car that runs good and you're able to get all the checkpoints and do all the stuff, it can go either way.
Yeah, that's good. So, like, everyone can come and everyone can compete and everyone can win. And I'm curious, like, I'm sure, racing on the road, it's not quite as intimate an experience. Like, you don't have control over, penalties and what happens to everyone. So I'm kind of curious how this is for you holding the event. So have you, I guess we'll ask the question. So, working with LeMons, did you judge races and everything, and to that level? I mean, I'm trying to think, like, oversee a race is the word I'm looking for. Have you ever overseen a race yourself?
Yeah, I do. So I don't know if you're aware of, the power structure of LeMons, but basically Jay Lamb, he started it, he owns it, he runs it. Well, he does the MC role, and then we have Judge Phil, who does the head judge role, and I do both of those jobs. So I'm very in depth of running the races on the ground, but the rally is a totally different thing. It's once you set them loose, they're pretty much on their own. You interact with them when you can and where you can. And the last one was a little different. We had different checkpoint system, but the one going forward, they don't have to check in every night. They don't have to stay at the same hotel. There's no meetings along the way. There will be certain possibilities of bonus points where it will be suggested that you're at a certain place at a certain time, but that's still totally up to you. And if you want to camp out in your car in the Walmart parking lot, you're perfectly welcome to do that. So in the races, it is very structured and it's all about overseeing them. But on the road, we're just going to get them there and let them loose. And if they make it to the end, they do. If they don't, better luck next time.
I'm just imagining all the missing persons reports that come from this of like, we just set a whole bunch of crappy cars loose in the world and like, last seen in like a beat up like Geo Metro, like that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I was actually amazed at the lack of carnage in the first one. Like, we really only broke and abandoned one vehicle out of the 50 cars on the first one, it was pretty amazing. Like, I figured 25% of the field would be spread out between Vegas and Bakersfield on day 3. I mean, I really thought we would have, but we had a Nash Metropolitan that broke its transmission in Death Valley, right in the middle of Death Valley. And it had to go back. It sat there for 3 days and had to be rescued. But every other car that started either quit and drove itself home, or it finished. A couple of them spent some time on the side of the road. A lot of them did. And then a few of them were actually had to be towed from certain points, but they got them fixed and pushed on and finished. So I was, the winter one, I'm not sure it's going to go that way. It depends a lot on the weather.
Yeah. Well, it's already December, typically it's still kind of warm here in the mid-Atlantic, and we're looking at negative temperature. We're looking at the low teens, which is the lowest it's been since the early 2000s. So we're looking to be good for January. I think this will be nice and balmy. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. Yeah, it has started out rather shockingly cold and nasty out there, so it could be incredibly interesting, especially those first couple days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, working defroster might be a good tactic for the people.
Oh yeah.
So because it's kind of you set the people off and loose into the world, how does it affect you? Like, how was the last one? Were you kind of nanny stating everyone, like going back and forth, having to check up on everyone, or is it you go from one point to the next point and you just kind of, try and beat everyone else there so you can have stuff set up for the end of the event?
Yeah, there was definitely a little bit of element of that, and that's something that we actually did away with for this time. Like, the last time you posted up your bonus points along the day, but then there was other things that you had to check in physically at the end of every day. So during the day, it was pretty fun. We would just start out and we would kind of weave our way through the traffic, if you will, and go to a lot of the checkpoints, and we'd hang out and wait for guys to show up and talk to them and stuff. But then towards the end of the day, we did have to kind of push on and get there ahead of everybody. But we've done away with that now. Everything's going to be remote. So, but we, like I said, there will be a meetup place every night. It'll be suggested, okay, this is where we're going to go for dinner and drinks or whatever. Mm-hmm. But again, not very structured. You can show up. You don't have to. Totally up to you.
Yeah, but I mean, half the fun, well, I would say more than half the fun of this is probably the, like, hey, we all made it to the, like, Outback Steakhouse or wherever, and we're all going to meet up and do drinks. And, like, can you believe all these crappy cars are in this parking lot? And, a lot of it is the camaraderie.
Exactly. Yeah. It absolutely is. And that's something else that really amazed me about the first one is just how well everybody got along, and it's much reflected of a paddock at a LeMons race. It's the very same thing. It's, you don't expect there to be that amount of camaraderie between people who are actively competing with each other, but I mean, to the point of no man left behind. People went to extraordinary lengths to help other teams out and even possibly save their lives. We had one situation where poor old Luigi might have died in Death Valley if it hadn't been for the guys in the diesel Mercedes. So,
that's awesome.
It's a great community.
Well, you're going to have to expand on that one a little bit. How did Luigi almost die in Death Valley?
Oh, man. Yeah, so we had a guy on the first one who was riding a I forget what, Suzuki 200 TW something. I may be totally badgering that, but it was a 200cc motorcycle of some kind. And so top speed around 55 miles an hour. Those are now outlawed, by the way, if you're planning on running a very small motorcycle in the future. No. But at the time, we let him run it. And because he was dressed as Luigi, I may have had more reservations at the beginning if he hadn't have been dressed as Luigi. but he was totally dressed as Luigi, so I just ran with it. I let him go, and so it turns out that the carrying capacity of a 200cc motorcycle going across the desert is not enough to carry enough water to keep the rider alive. So towards the end of the day, in the outstretches of Death Valley near the desert town of Trona, he started cramping up, and he had to take several breaks on the side of the road where he would park the bike, and he would try to lay under the shade of a mesquite bush, and he would stretch out on the ground to try to get the cramps out of his limbs so that he could ride a few more miles. And so that's where, just after sunset, he was found by one of the other teams, the guys from North Dakota, in a diesel Mercedes that ended up finishing. They won a trophy for something, I forget. But so they rescued him, threw him in the Mercedes, and one of their guys rode his little crappy motorcycle the next 3 hours to Bakersfield to finish the day. And so that, it's possible somebody else might have saved him, but they were running pretty behind because the Mercedes was overheating. Like every 20 miles they had to stop and refill the radiator, so they were one of the last people coming out of Death Valley, so they might have saved Luigi. But yeah, that was a good one.
Again, the statement that I think could only ever be said in a LeMons setting is, I would have had more reservations if he wasn't dressed like Luigi. I mean,
well, yeah, that's an incredibly limiting thing. You get away with a lot if you dress up as a convincing Luigi. You get away with murder.
I love it. It's so, spoiler alert, when I sent out the email to kind of do the set up the interview, Jay Lamb, he said you did things right in the vehicle you drove in the last rally. So what were you in? Like, he said you were suffering with everyone else. So
yeah, well, see, that's the thing, is Jay gets confused about lots of things. Actually, in the last rally, I was in a 2012 Jeep Cherokee, being chauffeured around. It was actually really comfortable. But I have done lots and lots of road trips in very other crappy vehicles. I actually do it all the time. And so he associates everywhere I go, I'm in some death trap, which is not too far from true. But no, during the rally itself, I had to be at point A and point B. I couldn't break down. So I couldn't really do it in a crappy car. I originally wanted to do it in the race Rambler. I don't know if you know the pink 1961 Rambler that races in LeMons.
Is that the
I'm
one
heavily
that
invested in that car.
Yeah.
And originally I wanted to drive that, but he forbade me from doing it in the Rambler. So I said, fine, I'll just do it. And actually Roland Hond, a friend of LeMons, came along and helped me work that first rally. Yeah. So we took his Jeep.
Mm-hmm. Of Rollin' and Rollin' buddy cop movie thing?
Yes, Rollin' and Rollin', yes. The pale Rollin' and Rollin' and Rollin'.
If you haven't seen that and you're listening to my voice, you need to go check out 24 Hours of LeMons YouTube channel. There's a wonderful video about that.
That was a good one. We did that down at DCR. We were in Texas. We were bored.
Bored in Texas? That seems impossible.
It was a long weekend.
So the other thing too is, will you be in something more fun, or are you gonna be doing another Jeep for this next rally coming up?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do it in a modern vehicle because I do have responsibilities. I got to get from point A to point B. One of these days I'll take one of these off. But I do stupid things like that all the time. I did 6,000 highway miles in the Rambler this year. I don't know if you remember the K car, but I did thousands and thousands of miles in the K car. Even my daily driver vehicles are multi-100,000-mile kind of death traps. So I get plenty of excitement. I actually drove a Tuk Tuk across India. So I've done loads and loads of road adventures.
Well, since we're on that topic, let's kind of dive deep into it. So you have a bunch of crap cars. You drove a Tuk Tuk across India. You're going to have to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, that was back in 2008. Me and a friend of mine, you know what a Tuk Tuk is, right? It's a little 3-wheeled, 7 horsepower It's a death trap, really.
Yeah.
We flew down to the southern tip of India, down to Cochin, and we picked up one of those, and we drove it up to Kathmandu in Nepal, 3,000 miles across basically all of India in 15 days. That was a hell of a trip.
Can I ask
The roads in
why?
India. Well, just because it was an organized thing. We raised $1,500 at the time. It was 1,000 British pounds, but it was $1,500 for charity.
Oh.
And then yeah. So it was kind of a setup thing for that, and so we heard about it and signed up when did it, and yeah, it was pretty amazing.
So you were saying the roads in India. I've seen a couple of.
Oh, they're terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's worse is that there's no policing of it whatsoever. So there's very few traffic signs or traffic signals or even stop signs. And those that exist are just completely ignored. I got to say, though, it's pretty amazing. Like, we barely ever stopped because we were on a Tuk Tuk. There were times when we passed by miles and miles and miles of car and truck traffic in a ditch because we had a Tuk Tuk. But there was only a couple of times, and usually it was for a train that we actually had to stop moving.
Huh.
You know, traffic just flows and flows and flows. It flows at the rate of imminent death all the time, but it never really stops moving. And the first couple of days were terrifying until we got the hang of it. Once you get the hang of it, like, they don't even pay attention to where they're going because they trust everyone else in traffic knows what they're going to do and lets them do it, and it actually works. It's pretty amazing, but it's rather shocking when you first get into it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's almost like that future where, like, cars don't stop because they're all, like, self-driving, where it looks like they're going to crash at every moment, but it's with people in them. So
yeah, exactly, like the opening credits to Futurama where the traffic just flows in like that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is in India right now. Go down there and look at it. It's exactly the same thing. People coming from the side street don't even look in the direction of oncoming traffic. They just blend right in, and everybody just makes room for them. It's pretty amazing.
It's got was that like a bucket list thing? Like it just had to have happened? Like, you know?
Yeah, it was just me and my brother were sitting around one night, and this other guy came in and he said, "Hey, you ever heard of this Tuk Tuk thing?" And we were like, "No, we never heard of it." And he said, so he started telling us about it, and we were like, "Hell yeah, that's awesome. When are they doing it?" And they're doing it, and then January, it starts January 1st. And so I was like, "You want to do that?" And he said, "Sure, let's do it." So we just signed us up, and we just went and did it. You know, just very spur of the moment thing.
That's awesome. It's road trips are so fucking awesome. So since we're on the topic of your history here, so how did you get into A, cars in general, B, racing, and C, into specifically crap car racing? So.
Well, I mean, cars in general, I'm from a trailer park in North Carolina, so, you know, we had crappy cars everywhere, and if you wanted to go somewhere, you had to fix the damn thing. So I just learned to work on cars from the time I was, 12 years old. I could, do basic stuff and just compounded from there, working on my own cars over the years. I did a little bit of dirt track racing, very unsuccessfully, in my 20s, and then kind of didn't get back into it at all until I discovered LeMons, and kind of branched out from there. I mean, I've always had crappy cars, but now I have more fun with them.
Mm-hmm. So what was the first car then?
First car I ever owned?
Yeah.
It was a 75 Mustang II with a 302 C4 automatic.
That's not too...
It was terrible. It was fast as shit. I'm lucky I didn't die, but it was a terrible piece of crap. Absolutely terrible piece of crap.
Yeah, it's one of those cars, when it worked, I'm imagining it was fun, and every other moment it was just breaking down.
Yeah. It had lots of brake problems and various other ailments, alternators, constantly spark plugs. It was always just, It was my first car. I paid $700 for it. It was running like crap. And as I started tuning it up, I'd fix something and then it would break and it'd sit in the yard for a few days. And then I'd get paid and I'd go buy the parts and I'd fix it and drive it for a few days till something else broke. And eventually I rebuilt the whole car. And then it was a screaming little badass. It was fun for about a year and a half. And then I dumped it in a lake in Florida, racing with this guy on a dirt road. And after that, it was never the same. It got water and everything. And everything started corroding, and so eventually I sold it for $200.
All right, we're gonna have to back up here again for a second. How did you dump it in a lake and then get it back out? Was the more boggling question in my mind.
Well, we pulled it out with a tractor, but so I was living in Florida. I was working at a golf course, and this guy had a V6 Mustang much later, and I also had a 4-cylinder, a 97, much newer one, and I drove that one all the time. And his V6 one was just a little bit faster than mine. I said, yeah, I'm going to bring my 75 down here next week. I'll show you. So I drove it to work one day, and when we left work, we were racing. Of course, it was a sand road on the backside of the golf course. And there was this place where there was a bridge. It was a big culvert where the alligators swam in and out. And when we got to it, I was just playing with him. I was beside him, making faces at him. And then before we got to the culvert, I nailed the gas and went ripping around him. And I caught a little air coming over the culvert. When I hit the other side, I just kind of skid sideways and slid off down into the lake. And so then we had to go get a tractor and pull it out. It got a little wet.
Lucky an alligator didn't move in that time. I mean...
Yeah, I scared them all away. It was a pretty big splash.
All right, so that's kind of that's like the perfect Floridian first car story. I mean, so
yeah.
So after that, I'm just kind of curious if you had any cars between then and now that have just kind of stood out in your mind as like really beloved, like.
Yeah, I've had quite a few. I guess my Jeep is the car I've had the longest, and it's put the most miles on it, and it's been incredible. I got a '97 Cherokee that I've basically daily drove for since '01, and it's a great car. It sucks on gas mileage, but everything else about it, off-road capabilities, dependability. Comfort. I mean, it's not incredibly comfortable, but it's not bad for what it'll do. So, that one, I have a great fondness for the old Jeep, and I still have that one. And I've had loads of little crappy cars. Nothing that really stood out until I started getting into LeMons. I got some pretty interesting cars now. Most of them are LeMons race cars, but I got a '73 Saab Sonnet. I've got a Volkswagen Quantum Synchro station wagon. I'm pretty heavily invested in the Rambler, although it really belongs to Corey Dickman, my good friend. But and then of course I had the K car for a little while. I've got a first generation MR2, not very interesting, but it's got a lot of great history. It's actually stick figure racing, their original MR2. It just lives in Denver, so I can race it there once a year. It's cheap,
Yeah. Well, I'm curious about the Sonnet. The Sonnet's a LeMons racer?
Yeah, it's probably the least successful LeMons racer of all time, mainly due to my incompetence. I built it back in 2012, and we ran Sears Point with it. We got 15 laps on the track, and we got towed off 4 times, and Jay told me to park the fucking thing because he was tired of towing it off the track, so he cut us off. We couldn't go back on track, even though I fixed it at that point. And I took it out twice, and I made it back every time. It was my other drivers that had a hard time, but it was incredibly difficult to drive, like the worst just piece of crap you've ever imagined. It had a jet ski carburetor on it, a 1-barrel jet ski carburetor, so it would either run wide open or not at all. And so it had no brakes, and it was incredibly janky. It probably shouldn't even been on a racetrack, but so then I got a new Weber, and I put it on there, and I brought it back for a Thunder Hill race later in the year, and went out on the warm-up lap, and it conked out at jump time, and screwed the motor on the first lap. So I didn't even make it to the green. I limped back off. I didn't even complete the warm-up lap. But I did make it back to the paddock. I didn't have to be towed off for the second one. So it has a grand total of 15 and 7/8 laps under competition, and it's still a terrible piece of crap. And the motor blew up, and it's got a Ford V4 in it, and you can't find the damn things. And so right now it's up in the UP of Michigan. My guess is under about 6 feet of snow, but someday I'm going to dig it out, and I'm going to rebuild it, and it's going to be glorious. But right now it's terrible piece of shit.
And the crazy thing is, I think sonnets are actually coming up in value now, which is the crazy thing to me. So
yeah, they probably are. And this one was it was actually, except for the interior was a little rough, it was in really, really good condition. It had been parked for 19 years, hadn't moved in 19 years. I put new tires on it, put new brakes on the front of it, cleaned out the fuel system, replaced the carburetor with a 1-barrel carburetor, and took it to the track and raced it. I mean, that's all I did to it. I built that whole car for $1,800, including the roll cage. And yeah, so it was, but it's definitely ruined now. I've had the body on and off of it a couple of times. It's got a few problems.
Well, Swedish car. That's the thing that's a little mind-boggling about me, about looking at the score sheet for the rally, is I guess Volvo and Saab kind of canceled themselves out with this, but German cars are negative points, and Eastern Soviet bloc countries are positive points, and Saab. There's no, or not Saab, but Swedish cars are just net neutral. So.
Yeah, I guess so, because the Swedes are such a wide range. If you look at the Volvos and the Saabs, right there, that's one of the most reliable, dependable vehicles ever made, and some of the absolute worst engineered nightmares of trying to change a single part on the damn thing on the other side. So yeah, we didn't take every country of origin into consideration when we arbitrarily pulled that shit out of our butt. So it's just if you bring something really crappy, if you bring an old enough Saab or an old enough Volvo, you'll get some bonus points just for it being old and crappy. So it'll balance out in the end.
Yeah, I don't know, it's gonna be it's such an interesting idea. I love that it's taking place. I'm really excited, looking forward to it. I want to
So what are you bringing?
I will be bringing, hopefully I'll be going with some other folks here, but I will be bringing a 91 Volvo 740 with no interior and no speedometer, no tachometer. It just has a temp gauge and a fuel gauge that work, and that's all the amenities in the car.
Oh, that's all you need, man.
Yeah.
That's all you need. The lack of interior, as long as the heater works good, you'll be fine. If the heater goes out, the lack of interior is going to hurt you. You'll be amazed what that little layer of carpet and unidentifiable fluffy shit underneath does to insulate a car, because I've done quite a few cross-country road trips in race cars with no interiors, and I have froze my ass off many times. So might want to think about at least lining it with a moving blanket or something.
It's got a side pipe that exits right underneath the driver, so that keeps you warm. So,
oh, yeah, that'll keep you warm. Yeah.
The fumes help the trip go by a little faster, too. So,
yeah. So as you don't get stuck in a snowbank, you'll be fine.
Well, actually, this thing was my snow beater for a while, and the reason it's got a side pipe exhaust is last winter it drove over. There's a big rock in the blizzard we had of just pure ice that decided to I tried to straddle, and it just hit the exhaust system and just took what remained of the exhaust system with it and just left it on the road behind me. I'm like, well, that's something I'm never going to see again. So side pipes it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually raced one of those. One of the very first LeMons car I ever raced was a 91 740 wagon that belonged to John Pagel. That was the very first LeMons race I ever did at Sonoma. Good race car.
It's underrated, I think, in terms of Now, what engine did yours have? Because that's a big factor.
It just had the 4-cylinder. Actually, the first race it had the boat motor. That's right. The very first race it had the super cheaty Volvo boat motor.
Yeah.
That made exactly the same horsepower as the one that came out of it. So
Yeah. So that's
and promptly blew up 4 hours into Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's this one's got the boat motor, which is wonderful. So old iron block thing.
They got a little more torque. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the guys I've seen and been around, they say, it's you hear that thing floor and it's a lot of noise, a lot of like fire spitting out the side of the exhaust, and somehow you're still exactly where you were like 10 seconds ago. So
yeah.
Well, so that was the first race, was the Volvo 740, and that was what, like 2011? You said about 5 years ago.
Yeah, that was Sonoma, March 2011. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, was that your team, or did you kind of like hitch a ride?
No, I just kind of hired on. I never knew that LeMons existed. Somehow I totally missed its existence, even though I was living in the Bay Area for the entire time it existed. Until 2011, in early like February, I was scrolling through then Infineon, most people Sears Point Raceway. I was just scrolling through the schedule and I saw 24 hours of Le Mans go by, and I said, that's in France. Why is that on the, and I scrolled back down and looked at it, and they said 24 hours of LeMons. I said, what the hell is that? So I clicked on it, and it took me to the LeMons website, and I was like, how did I not know that this existed? This is awesome. And so I got into the forum, and I got to poking around, and I found a guy that was looking for drivers for the race like 3 weeks later. And I was like, yeah, I'm in. And so I kind of hobbled together to get some overnight shipping on some gear, and went out there and ran the race.
Mm-hmm. And how many races did you run before you decided you need to get your own crappy car into it?
Oh, immediately. Like before the race ever started, I was already making plans to get involved somehow, build cars and do various things. I ended up doing 8 races that very first year.
Wow.
And I did 12 races the year after that. And so that was,
I mean, that's got to be, 8 races and then 12 races. So 12 races, that's got to be a race a month every month, right?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, they were kind of spread out and stuck together here and there. But
I mean, there's the way it's set up in the system. I mean, you're kind of going region hopping. So you go into, when you did 12 races, was that every race on the calendar that year?
No. That first year, actually 2011 was the biggest year as far as the schedule goes. There was 24 races on the schedule that year. So basically I did all the ones in California, and one in Denver, one in Texas, and one in Oregon. So I basically did almost everything on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. And then the next year I did all the races in California, or we didn't do Oregon. We did Washington the next year, and I did all the races in Texas. And then I went out east and I did, I think it was Chicago and New Hampshire that year on the East Coast. And then same thing the following year, except I added even more of the East Coast stuff, CMP and Barber. Barber came along about that time. And so eventually by my last year as a competitor, there were 18 races on the schedule, and I did 14 out of the 18.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, that's got to be exhausting half the time, though, right?
It was amazing. I love doing it. I've worked in the travel industry. I've traveled for the last basically 20 years, pretty much nonstop. So I get terribly bored with like normal life. So going off to the racetrack, half the weekends a year, I mean, it's paradise to me. As a Jay and a lot of those guys, they don't like doing the traveling. They don't like going to the races. I absolutely love it. It's like not even it's not work to me. It's just I want to be there anyway. If I wasn't working, I would be there. I'd probably be broke ass, but I'd still be at a lot of them.
Well, do you want to get down to the ones that are going on in Australia?
Yeah, I'd like to go down there at some point. Kind of been focusing on getting the rally thing going. That came along, started about the same time I started on the rally stuff, and between working the full schedule for the last couple of years, did all the races this year and 17 out of 19 last year. I've just kind of been too busy to get down there. But yeah, definitely eventually I want to go down and either maybe officiate one of the races or just go down and race it. I still like to race. I take a few of the Lemons races off every year to race my own cars here and there. So yeah, I mean, I definitely maybe just go down doing a ride and drive with one of the teams down there.
Mm-hmm. Now, I can't let this conclude without asking, you raced in Lemons. You did the 740. There's some videos I've seen of you where you've been involved in a couple of incidences. I'm curious as to the first on-track, let's say, love tap you had with another vehicle, or maybe just spinning out into it. I mean, I think a lot of people who are wanting to get into Lemons are a little fearful of, well, what happens if I wreck and everything. So let's kind of...
Yeah, well, we're pretty forgiving. We expect people to wreck cause exactly like that. We do it ourselves, I'm actually an incredibly well-behaved Lemons driver. I've turned stints in more than 80 Lemons races, and that's really the only car I've ever hit at speed. I did crash Speedy Comp's BMW into the wall in New Hampshire doing about 60 miles an hour, but I never touched another car. It was just me and the wall. But those are the only two cars I've ever crashed in Lemons, and Jay loves to bust my balls about that. And they love to show the video. It's because it's the Model T GT, see, because Fish, the guy that runs that car, he hates me, and he raises hell about me crashing his car, so they got to make a big deal out of it. It made me feel bad. But really, I'm pretty well behaved on the racetrack. I've spun out occasionally, and, I've had some incidental contacts here and there, but I still have single-digit black flags and more than 80 races, so, I'm fairly well behaved, but they get lots of airplay off me tagging the T. And the great thing was he was leading the race, and that was the last lap of the race. So it made it even more special, I guess.
Now, did you ever have to do any of the punishments?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Anytime we get in trouble, we get punished way more than anybody else. Mm-hmm. I've been pretty clean for the last couple of years, so I haven't had any. But towards the end of my competitor days, I got caught up in many of Judge Phil's terrible penalty ideas.
Did you have one you absolutely hated doing?
Oh, well, you hate doing them all. I mean. Even though they're fun in retrospect at the time, you're just like, you can't believe that you screwed up, because no matter what happens, if you find yourself there, you did something. You put yourself in that position, no matter how it ended up, you got yourself there. So, you're just kicking yourself for screwing over the team and making yourself look like an idiot. And so they all suck. That's why I try very hard to behave myself so I don't have to get wrapped up in all that crap. I can just go out and turn some laps and take the car back and hand it off to the next guy instead of having to dress up like the village people and go entertain the people in the paddock. But again, that's part of what makes Lemons what it is, and it's that's how we don't take ourselves too seriously. Is occasionally we're the guys that get dressed up and have to go dance around the paddock too. So yeah, we suck it up.
Mm-hmm. Now, on the flip side of that, do you have a favorite punishment to dole out?
There's so many. It's I actually love when they weld the things on the cars. They rarely ever do that, but they a couple of times in the last couple of years they brought back the welding the pigs on the top of the car and things like that. Yeah. Phil and Eric always come up with the great penalties. I kind of suck at them. I came up with a few. The one I enjoyed the most, but everybody hated it, was I'm a big fan of trivia, and so I had a box of Trivial Pursuit cards. So it was trivia versus Judge Steve. So you had to beat me in a round of 5 trivia questions pulled out of the box of Trivial Pursuit cards. And I spent so much time playing the first edition of Trivial Pursuit that I pretty much knew every fucking answer in the box. So they were screwed as soon as they got there. And so they would all get frustrated and leave. And So, it's either you do the penalty or you're parked for an hour, something like that. So if they didn't beat me in an hour, then they just wasted their whole hour trying to beat me. But I only brought that one out a few times. I loved it. I enjoyed it very much, but everybody else kind of hated it. So I didn't do that one anymore. And then the obscure weights and measures, that was one I made up. But I really liked that one. So you had to go out and you had to convert the weight of your car into the overall length in cubits, and the weight in stone, and the capacity of the radiator in hogsheads, and obscure weights and measures that haven't been used in centuries. And then you had to go figure all that out and bring it back to them. They didn't like that one either. Again, I enjoyed that one very much, but yeah. So
yours seem to be very intelligence-based punishments, like keeping down the dumb people.
Well, that's the thing is Phil and all those guys, they've done everything you can imagine, and it's so hard to come up with something original. So I was trying to throw a different angle at it, and I try, and none of mine works. So screw it. I'll just let Phil deal with that. You can dress them up. Yeah. But we have the inspiration. I send people out to get me milkshakes. That's what I do. It's a good punishment. Okay, you're parked for an hour, or you can go get me a milkshake, and when I have a milkshake, you can go back to the track. I wield the judicial power a little differently than others, but it's just as effective. So.
Well, that's actually a good one. So, do you oversee the race at Autobahn by any chance in Chicago?
Oh yeah. I work those all the time.
All right, so there's a Portillo's that takes about 25 minutes to get to, because I actually did this run. That's they got some great hot dogs and hamburgers and milkshakes and malts and all sorts of stuff.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to keep that in mind. I love that one. Go get me a milkshake, because I love milkshakes, and it just works out great. I can have a fresh milkshake. I don't even have to go get it. So.
And they have all sorts of different flavor milkshakes. I'll fucking plug Portillo's till the day I die. They have all sorts of different milkshakes, so you can maybe make them go get you a milkshake that you don't have currently as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love peanut butter milkshakes, and they're hard to find. A lot of places don't have peanut butter milkshakes, so I'm sure that if they're that versed in the milkshake arts, I'm sure they have a peanut butter in their repertoire.
They do have one, because I'm pretty sure my brother always gets that damn thing. My favorite one is they literally take I love Chicago for you. Everyone listening already fucking knows this, but. And then they have a shake where they literally take a whole slice of chocolate cake, blend it up, and put it in a milkshake, and they give it to you straight up. I'm like, it's got little chunks of frosting and cake in it. It's absolutely delicious. I'm a weird person, so yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, I'd give it a shot.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's my. If some poor soul has to do that now, I kind of feel bad, but not really. So 2 rallies are coming up. You got the retreat from Moscow, and then there's another one that's going to take place in Death Valley, right?
No. So it's basically the same one. It's going to take place again with Monterey Car Week. So the first one we did went out through basically up to Fallon, and then Vegas, and through Death Valley, and then back to Monterey. We're again doing round trip out of Monterey, but this time we're going up to Seattle and back.
Okay.
So I'm trading in the hell of Death Valley in August for the hell of very long days on very winding roads, all the way up the coast of California, and then across to the Cascades, and then back down through the Cascades, back into California, and then back to Monterey. So very long days, lots of winding roads, lots of broken down cars along the I-5. I think it'll be glorious.
Well, the one thing we all know about California roads is at least they're never, traffic jammed, because that would really affect a crappy car's, cooling system.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would totally suck. Yeah. If you got stuck behind a Winnebago on Highway 1 all day for the first 2 days, that would totally suck. Mm-hmm. But that never happened, so
of course not.
I wouldn't worry about that one. And there's parts stores all along that abandoned coast of Oregon and Washington, southern. Yeah, so no problems.
Yeah.
Should be great.
Hmm. Yeah, well, on that note, it's kind of curious. So, driving Moscow, Pennsylvania to, you know, basically like it's around Nashville, but Paris, Tennessee. At least there's a ton of, you know, obscure junkyards there. I mean, if you pull up and you kind of look online, there's a lot of good junkyards for parts and supplies if need be. I can't
Yeah.
imagine Northern California and that stuff, and especially the cars you get, are going to, if you could find a parts store, if it would even have the parts you needed for it. So,
Yeah, well, that's if it was easy, anybody could do it. So,
yeah.
don't worry about that. That's the main motivation of why I moved it from Moscow, Idaho to Paris, Texas, because people seriously would have died up there. And if not, there's no way. There's two auto zones in the entire state of Idaho. So I mean you'd just be screwed. So we need a better population center, and the out here on the East Coast, they're used to the snow. If it snows 6-8 inches, they'll move it out of the way. You won't be stuck for very long. But out there, you could be buried and dead before anybody ever knew you were missing. So, yeah. But yeah, the summer one will be a challenge for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of miles, but there's loads of stuff up there. There's more there than you think.
Yeah.
It might be a few miles away, but you'll get there.
Mm-hmm. So bring a roof rack with a bicycle. Might be good advice.
Yeah, but there's loads of traffic. You can hitchhike.
Oh.
People are very friendly in Northern California. You can just totally hitchhike. Yeah.
Oh man. So, you've driven a lot, you traveled a lot, so you might be the best expert on the question I have to ask all my guests here, which is, what is the hardest food to eat while driving?
Oh man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you definitely it very rarely comes up, but it actually did come up with me a few times. Is liquid based like soups.
Mm-hmm.
Other things are a pain in the ass too. Anything that falls apart really easily. But I did a road trip across China, and we were in Tibet. We were in Land Cruisers going across Tibet, and I had terrible altitude sickness for 3 days. And then I was trying to eat a bowl of soup in the back of a Land Rover, and the roads are terrible, and I kept splashing it everywhere. And I was incredibly pissed off because it was the first time I'd been able to eat in 3 days, and the Chinese driver was doing it on purpose. I kept yelling at him, telling him to slow down because he's spilling my damn soup. But so that's the worst eating experience. I've done a lot of eating in a lot of cars, and I'm pretty good at it, and I rarely have issues. But that kind of stands out in my mind was the yak broth soup after I'd been unable to eat for 3 days. I still hate that guy. Chinese tour guide. He was such a dick.
All right. So many more questions were raised by that whole statement right there. So
that was a good trip. That was actually right after the Tuk Tuk. We got to Kathmandu in Nepal. We spent a week in Kathmandu, and then we hiked up to the border and crossed the border into Tibet, and did a week across Tibet, Lhasa, and then took the air train to Beijing. That's pretty amazing. But the first few days are rough. Altitude sickness is a killer.
Yeah. All right. So, are you holding out any other weird adventure stories that involve cars on us? Did you drive like the spine of Africa, something like that?
No. Well, I did a 13,000-mile road trip around Australia in an old Holden Commodore, 1994 silver 4-door Holden Commodore with no AC. And a wonky belt tensioner that went waka 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 waka. It did that for 13,000 miles. It drove me nuts. That was an awesome trip. We did 400 miles of dirt road from Uluru to Alice Springs. We busted a hole in the gas tank in the middle of nowhere. We were 300 miles from anything, and so we had to patch that up with bubble gum and duct tape and various things to get us to Alice Springs, where we bought some JB Weld and fixed it right. As far as I know, to this day, it's still holding up. At least I haven't heard back from the owner. So, of course, I never really told him that we put a hole in the gas tank.
Yeah.
JB Weld. But as far as I know, I still talk to him occasionally. He's never brought it up, so that was a good trip. That was 3 months, so there's lots of parts to that story. But the Alice Springs, the gas tank thing was pretty good. We shouldn't have been doing. We were kind of off roading in the Holden Commodore. Yeah, it's kind of like a Ford Taurus, basically, like the same, mid '90s 4-door V6 automatic. Piece of crap family truckster Ford Taurus of Australia, the Holden Commodore. But it got us there. It's a good little car. Just that wonky noise kind of drove us nuts.
Well, hopefully he doesn't listen to this. We do have a really, decent base in Australia, so you might be getting called about some JB Weld. So JB Weld.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he knows how to get a hold of me.
So that's awesome. So the road trip thing is kind of, you weren't kidding. Like, you like traveling around. Do you fly when you do the stuff in the States, or do you do?
Yeah, I do road trips a lot. I put a rough estimate of 35,000 highway miles last year. I put on driving around the country, going to the different races. I much prefer driving to them if I can, especially if I can link a few of them together. But yeah, I basically crisscrossed the country, 2.5, 3 times last year, and then various other things. I also worked for a travel company loosely that I've been affiliated with for a long time, and I do some traveling for them. So I rack up a lot of highway miles. Of course, I do fly quite a bit. I don't know, 15 times a year probably. Maybe not quite, but in and outs. And then, I haven't done any good road trips outside the U.S. recently, but I'm always up for that. I have done a few others around Europe, and so I'm always up for a road adventure.
I guess we could probably ask you like questions about all the road trips and everything, but I'm just so fascinated by it. I really want to like delve deeper into it, but I also want to go with kind of a hypothetical here and ask you, what is the ultimate road trip you would like to take? I'm sure if you've driven this much and you've done that sort of, you enjoy it to that level, I'm sure there's probably some trip out there that you're just dying to take that you haven't done yet. Or have you done the trip that you really wanted to take? Was it going around Australia? Was that like the ultimate trip?
No. I mean, I definitely don't think I've done the ultimate trip. I mean, I've done lots and lots of cool stuff in cars and various other things. Like mountain biking the Death Road in Bolivia and crossing the Salt Flats and the Atacama Desert and things like that. But I mean, it's endless. The world is full of roads. There's roads that go everywhere, and I mean, there's just it is endless the amount. I've always kind of fantasized of driving a Volkswagen Beetle to all 7 continents.
Oh.
Because there's pretty much parts everywhere for the original Beetles. So chances are that, I think, to me, that's the car you have the best chance of completing that journey would be an air-cooled original Beetle. And so I've kind of always, I've actually spent probably way too much time thinking of the logistics of doing just that. So I guess if anything, that would be the ultimate. I mean, there's lots of other roads, the Dalton Highway up in Alaska. I've done quite a bit of road tripping stuff up in Alaska too, but the only time I made it to the Dalton, I didn't make it all the way to the end. I had to stop up at Coldfoot Camp and turn around and go back. So, certain things like that I would like to knock off my list. But like I said, it's endless. There's just so many roads and so many places that they'll take you. But yeah, I guess if I have to just hold on to one dream, you don't think you could argue with taking a Beetle around the world as a pretty ultimate road trip.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so fascinating to me because my first thought was, well, you start obviously in South America, drive all over, drive the Pan American Highway, Asia, Africa, then end up in Australia to go over. But I guess if you start in Africa, you could go from Africa up to Europe, cross over Asia, hit Europe or hit Alaska via ferry, and then drive down south, and then you could go from South America to the Antarctic Peninsula, because I think there are some roads on the Antarctic Peninsula, so that might be.
Yeah, you can go there. You gotta have special permits to get into McMurdo Station. But I'm sure for something like that, I'm sure they would give me a permit to bring the Beetle down and do a few donuts and leave. But my dream was always to start in San Francisco. I spent a lot of time living in the Bay Area, and just to me that was the logical place to start, and then go south down to the tip, go across Antarctica, and then go from Antarctica to the tip of Africa, and then go up Africa through Europe and then across to Siberia, and then take a boat back across the Bering Strait back into Alaska, and then drive down back to San Francisco. So at least that was the route I envisioned.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think you could get a Beetle across Antarctica, or?
Well, you can't drive all the way across it. No. There's really no roads that cross Antarctica at all. There's only small access roads that go from ports to the stations, like the McMurdo Station, and loads of different countries. I don't know how many have permanent and semi-permanent stations, scientific research areas set up down there. So because the Americans, that's McMurdo Station, you would have to get permission from the government to come down there to bring the car, and then they would probably have to bring it over for you on the Coast Guard ice cutter. I'm not sure. You might get it on the cargo ship that follows the ice cutter, but somehow I'm sure that would probably be definitely the most pain in the ass and logistically difficult section of the whole trip. Maybe the Panama Canal is going to be another one getting across there, but I'd have to say it'd be the most difficult getting it in there. But I'm sure they would understand and allow you to do it. Just go cruise around in the Beetle, take some pictures with the locals, and then head out again.
It's one of the weird, wonderful things about this world where if you just come up with a balls crazy enough idea, most governments will go, you know what, fuck it, yeah, why not?
Everybody loves the Beetle. That's another thing that makes the Beetle the perfect vehicle to do such a thing. Is there's this crazy guy who's driving a Beetle around the world, and he wants to come to McMurdo Station. The guy running McMurdo Station like, hell yeah, I love Beetles. Let it come. So.
Yeah. Oh my god. I mean, a car developed by Nazis but loved by everyone. It's such a great little car.
Yeah. It's the people's car. Regardless of its origins, it is the people's car, and it's one of the greatest things ever created. There's no question.
Mm-hmm. It is a effort. It's like a study in simplicity and kind of like form following function. It's such a wonderful little thing. I crap on it occasionally, but I actually really do.
Oh yeah, I mean I've cussed quite a few. Actually, I haven't owned. I've only owned one, and it was so decrepit that I've been terrified to own another one. But I do feel often when I'm perusing Craigslist for some random piece of crap, I run across one. I'm like, man, I'd like to have another Beetle. But then I remember the first one I had, and I'm like, maybe not. But they are iconic. They're one of the greatest vehicles ever.
Another good question here for you, since we're kind of on the topic. So then, do you have a dream car out there that you would love to get your hands on? Like money's no object, and you just can go out and just pick one car out of the world and make it your own.
Well, I mean, if money was no object, then I'd, of course, get the most expensive one ever, and then I'd sell it and get a bunch of other crap that I could actually use. But, I mean, I think, to me, like, the most beautiful car and something that I would absolutely love to have is a 67 Mercury Cougar XR7. To me, I think that's one of the most beautiful cars ever created. I don't know what it is about that car. I don't know if I have a thing for Fords in general and old Fords in particular. My dad had a Fairlane. I remember one of the first things ever was I loved the smell of that Fairlane, like inside the car and the exhaust of it. Like, it was a small block Ford, and I just love the smell of that car, and that's always stuck with me. So old Fords like that, and that car in particular, I just think it's just a beautiful car. So I'd love to have one of those in, somewhat presentable condition. And they're out there. I'm I'm just poor, and I've never gone out and got one yet. But someday.
Yeah. That. Yeah, I find those two things in my head holding them diametrically opposed. Like, yeah, I can't afford one, but you ever drive around Australia? Because that seems like the,
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. If I had my financial priorities a little, I could afford a fucking ton, if I wanted to. But I also couldn't tell you stories about doing road trips around Australia and across India. So,
yeah.
it's a balance thing. Someday when I'm old and I don't want to travel around the world in stupid cars and things anymore, then I'll buy me a nice old Cougar and cruise it up down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Try to pick up some cougars with it.
Exactly. A cougar for your cougar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I could probably sit here and pick your brain for just the road trip thing. Is just like my mind is going crazy with like what you could have done and like driving around Europe and doing all these road trips. It's fucking fascinating. So.
It really is. People should get out more. Really, if I can give any advice to your listeners, get out more. Just take your car and just go driving. There's so many amazing, stupid things along the road that endless stories are just waiting around the bend. Just go out and drive around, have a look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's time much better spent than sitting on the couch, watching reruns of reality shows.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think. Oh, I hope my listeners don't watch reality shows. If you do, shame on you. Shame. No. So
only reality shows about cars.
exactly. And most of those are kind of crappy now, anyway. But that's a topic for another day. So, getting back on track, Ike. Back on track. All right. So, we're a little over time. Like I said, I could probably sit here and just pick your brain for the next 8 hours, but we'll kind of, give you a little bit of mercy here and go. So, last thing we'll ask is, piece of advice for people headed up for the rally, the one in Moscow, PA, than the one in the summertime. If you have any advice for them on what to do, what to prep, what to bring, where to stay, how to stay, anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, where to stay, how to stay. I mean, we do give them a list of suggested hotels, and that's where we're going to be staying for the rallies. And of course, ideally, we'd want everybody to make it in before it got too late and kind of get together for the evening and talk about the day and swap stories from the road and things like that. But ultimately, it's like I said, it's pretty freestyle. For the winter rally, I mean, I really. Good tires and some chains just in case. Beyond that, if you can keep it running, it's very unlikely you're going to die. If there's lots of traffic, somebody will find you and pull you out. So just try to put some good tires on it if you're going to do anything. And for the summer rally, it's going to be pretty laid back this year as far as the weather goes. Not too many worries about dying on the side of the road for that one. Maybe blocking traffic on Highway 1 with your broken down hoopty, but that's, you could do that every day. So, just maybe a good comfortable seat for that one. It's going to be lots of miles.
All right. That sounds like good advice. It's Steve McDaniel, or as Jay Lamb apparently has foisted upon you, Steve McD. Your expression would when you said that was of utter defeat. I'm sure there's a wonderful story behind that.
Jay likes to hang things on me. That one I don't mind so much, but he keeps telling people I was in the military, and then they want to talk about the military. I'm like, dude, I was never in the military. He just makes things up. I don't know.
It takes a wonderful imagination to come up with something as great as the 24 Hours of LeMons, I guess.
So. Oh, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Jay. He's absolutely brilliant. I mean, beyond. You never tire of sitting around chatting with Jay Lamb. It's, nonstop. But, yeah. He gets some funny ideas sometimes.
So, everyone listening, you need to go to 24hoursoflemons.com. Look up the rally stuff. If you can attend, I would recommend it. It's $495 per car to get in, and then pay your own way for room and board, basically. So, and I'm sure there'll be wonderful gifts and prizes and trophies along the way. So, Steve, do you have anywhere where people could follow you on the social media?
I'm on Facebook, Stephen R. McDaniel, and I run the LeMons Rally page on Facebook as well. So contact me through either one of those. And yeah, the really looking forward to the Winter Rally. We're doing, the Tail of the Dragon, lots of other cool stuff along the way. So the guys from Roadkill are coming out and filming an episode. Hopefully they won't get stuck in a ditch and die anywhere. That would be embarrassing. But, if they do, it'll be a good story. So, yeah, got that to look forward to.
I almost forgot about that. Like, it was question number 1 on my little prep sheet here, and I totally spaced over it. So the Roadkill guys are coming. I can't believe I missed out on that.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. They've come out and did the race with us, and I thought they did a really good job of doing the episode on that. In the race, they pretty much suck, but that's pretty common for LeMons, especially for your first one. So, but yeah, I'm really looking forward for those guys to be along with us and share the adventure, and then see what they come up with for an episode on that. It'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Now, would it be, since we're on this topic, this will be the last thing, I swear, before we get off right here. Would it be embarrassing or awesome for them to win the race or win the rally?
I can't imagine it being embarrassing for anybody. They're definitely going to get no special treatment from me. I pride myself in trying to lay the rules out and be as fair with everybody. And really, the points speak for themselves. They're not going to get any special treatment for sure. And if they win, I do think they're planning on coming in a couple of days before and buying the car off Craigslist, which is huge bonus points in my book. And I would give that to anybody. So if they win it, they're going to earn it. And if they do, good for them. It'll be great for them. I don't care if they do, because they'll earn it if they do. I'm not going to give it to them. As a matter of fact, if it comes down to very close, I might even skip the Tales of Justice against them to make a good story. But no, I totally wouldn't do that ever.
Well, if they don't win, that means they have to come back next year. So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we tried to get them to do the summer one, and they're so wrapped up in Car Week in Monterey that they couldn't get away. But maybe this year, especially if they have a good run at this one.
Mm-hmm. It's so awesome. I had Finnegan on, great guy. Can't wait to see Freiberger. Everyone, I'm sure, there's a lot of auto journalists, maybe some that I'm trying to poke and pry into coming up to the event as well. So, maybe come along. Maybe you can do a little bit of autograph signing. So, everyone needs to check it out. Steve, hold on. I will say goodbye to you off air. Everyone listening, I will be right back, and I will close out the show. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. Go check out the 24 Hours of LeMons. If we had Jay Lamb on here a while ago. He's a great guy. Steve McDaniel. Everyone in the organization is absolutely fantastic. Follow them on their Twitter account. I should have this stuff out and available at times, Ike, when you're going to plug this stuff. You can go to 24hourslemons.com. You can Google them. You can go to at 24 Hours of LeMons is their Twitter account. They also have an Instagram, a Facebook, everything. Just go check them out. Follow along. You need to be following their YouTube account too. It's some great videos going up there. They always have the recap stuff hosted by, Jay Lamb. So get out there, check it out. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure if you like what you hear, you tell a friend, you tell a loved one, an enemy, coworker, whoever. It really helps us grow here as a group. The more people that are out there that are being told, the better we get chances of bringing in some bigger and better guests. It's been a fantastic year here, 2016, for the show. So I'm hoping next year, bigger and better things. Just make sure we keep growing. We're doing good right now. So leave a review on iTunes. Tell a friend. We really appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Entitled Car Show. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Just rightfootdown.com. Just everywhere where you're at social media. If you find a spot where I'm not, send me an email at untitledcarshow@rightfootdown.com, and I will get our social media presence there. Follow Ryan West, our West Coast correspondent, at Ryanator122 on Twitter. other than that, everyone, thanks so much for listening. Have a good night. Have a good evening. Whatever the time, wherever you are. Thanks so much for listening. Be safe out there.